Well, as always, it's an honor, it's a privilege to be in front of you all. I never take this moment for granted because, like I always say, he don't have to use me, but he's using me anyway, and I'm thankful for that. And we go into the Gospel of Mark. You'll find today's assignment. We're going to be in Mark chapter 5, 18 through 20. You don't got to put on the screen yet. I want to just talk a little bit before we get right into it. Before we get right into the text, I want to talk to you all about something that we all have and something that a lot of people don't fully embrace. Something that we all have, no matter your background, no matter your ethnicity, your occupation, we all have it. Pastors have it. Teachers have it. Fry cooks have it. Bartenders have it. Everybody has it. Regardless of ethnicity, regardless of your culture, regardless of your background, regardless if you choose pumpkin pie over sweet potato pie, you all have it. And that is your story. We all in this room have a story. In this room and watching online, we all have a story. A story is a set of experiences that we've all had. Good experience and bad experience. See, it's not just good experiences only, but it's the bad experiences as well that makes up our story. And as much as we don't want to claim the bad experiences, but our life, where you are right now, is a unique mixture of the sweetness of the good and the bitterness of the bad, all mixed together to create your story. Shout out to all the mixologists in the room. But it's a unique mixture of the sweetness and the bitterness, all makes up your story. And can we be honest, you wouldn't be you without your story. Pastor Nick wouldn't be Pastor Nick without his story. Bishop Shannon wouldn't be Bishop Shannon without his story. Brother Braxton wouldn't be Brother Braxton without his story. Marcus wouldn't be Marcus without his story. People wouldn't be who they are without your story. And as much as we try to, a lot of people don't claim your story because of the negative experiences. But it's those negative things that make you where you are right now. I was talking to this one lady. She's very wealthy financially, and she's like set off. She's pretty good. And she was like, well, I'm this way because of the bankruptcy. Because she had that in her story, she learned lessons from it, learned how to manage it. Now she's much better than what she was, but that bankruptcy is a part of her story. That's why we should embrace our story. We need to appreciate our story. We need to own our story, because you wouldn't be you without your story. And that's my subject. I'm gonna give y'all a subject before I get into text. The subject is embrace your story. Because when you embrace something, you appreciate it. Think about it. When you embrace something fully, you appreciate it. And we should appreciate our story. Our story. And so now we could go into the text. As Jesus was getting into the boat, the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus said, no. Go home to your family and tell them everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been. So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him. And everyone was amazed at what he told them. Jesus basically commissioned this brother to tell his story. And in order to tell your story, you need to embrace your story. Don't be embarrassed by it. Embrace it. Your past is your past. It's a part of your story, so embrace it. I have a problem. I have a problem whenever I'm watching a TV show or a movie, and one of the characters on the screen draw me in. I just can't help but start Googling them. I can't help but start. You ever seen somebody like, oh, they killing that role? I want to know. Oh yeah, no, it's not you. No, I see somebody act. I say, oh, they good, and so I start researching their story. Like, I'll forget about the show, I'll forget about the movie, and I will be like, yo, how did they get to, because I love hearing people's story. How did they get to where they are right now? Because a lot of people just see the name and they don't know the story. And that's the problem. A lot of people know your name and they judge you off your name, but they don't know your story. They're quick to judge you on something you made in a snapshot, but they don't know the full background of your story, because if you saw people's story, you most likely will understand what they're doing. You might understand, okay, I see why they made that decision, because of their story, because of their past, because of their background, because of what they've been through. And a lot of times, and we doing this thing called fishers of men, like, to me, your story is your bait. Your story is because your story, you don't know who else has a similar story that's struggling, and your story can be used to bring them in. That's why we should fully embrace our story. And when I remember I was talking to this one guy, like, he was getting judged a lot. And then I was sitting there listening to him, and we had a nice little conversation. And he was a pastor. And he was like, Nick, like, my story, like, I used to be out here just in the street life, hard. And when you listen to people's story, like, okay, I see why his mindset is the way it is. He was like, I was out here, I'm going to be honest, my background was out here doing wrong. I was out here living my best life. I was out here selling drugs. I was out here gangbanging. But he was on fire for the Lord. He's straight because of his past and where God has brought him from, because of his story. And he was on fire. And he was just getting so excited, telling like, Nick, man, I did this. Man, I was out here. I was doing so well in the streets. I was making about $5,000 a week, bro. I was like, whoa. That's a lot of paper. You don't got to give me the details, but I'm pretty sure you was doing something for $5,000 a week. And he was like, Nick, like, won't Jesus do it? And I said, oh man, that would have been a tough call for me to make. To walk away from $5,000 a week, the way my student loans are set up, I'm like, Jesus, can we put a pause a little bit? Like, let me just work out my affairs before I make this decision, because Sally Mae is on me. But he was on fire for the Lord. And the thing is, he was like, Nick, I love God because I was so jacked up, but he still used me. And it's some people that feel like they so jacked up that they cannot be used by God. His story was full of gangbanging, drugs, and all that stuff. It most likely could have turned other people off. It can turn man off. Your story can turn off man, but it won't turn off God. See, some people might think your story is just a little too much. You ever been talking to somebody like, that's a strong story, man. Like, to all the single people here, you dating and you hear their story, like, I don't know if I want that baggage. I don't know if I want that baggage. Because your story can turn some people off. I've been turned off by stories. I'm like, God, that sounds quite a lot. I don't know if I'm ready to handle all that. I'm still human. God's still working on me. But God is like, I can handle that story. So it might turn them off. You might have been through a lot and you feel like nobody will give you, like, extend you that olive branch. Nobody will use you. Nobody will give you an opportunity. But God will use you in spite of your story. Because we all have a story. All of us is jacked up in some way. We all jacked up in some way. And we all have a story, but God will look at our story and be like, I will still use them. Don't believe me? We could look at the Apostle Paul. Before Paul, he was Saul. And Saul had a story. He had a bad rep out here, and God still used him. But the Bible is filled with stories of jacked up folk being used by God, full of imperfect people being used by God, full of people with an ugly past, and still be used by God. Saul was a man that led persecutions of the church. He led persecutions of the church, and he was active in threatening believers. So he was persecuting and threatening believers. Then on his way to Damascus to threaten some believers, he had an encounter with Jesus. He had an encounter with Jesus that changed the trajectory of his life. One encounter can change your entire situation. All it takes is one encounter to change it. All it takes is one encounter to change it. And that should provide comfort to us when we're sitting here, because we all got some family members and some loved ones. We really want them to get their relationship right with God. We know people that's fumbling their relationship with God. We know people that's pretty much gambling on their relationship with God. But here's the thing, all it takes is one encounter. Because what I learned, it's truly hard to explain God. It's truly hard to explain because God is not someone that can be explained. He has to be experienced. God has to be experienced. You ever try to explain, you're like, that don't even sound right. That don't even, but you really can't explain, because God, you really can't explain him. He's too big. He's too wide. His ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. You really can't explain them. But let me tell you something. If you truly have an encounter with Jesus, your life will change. I'm a firm believer that it's really hard. I don't see how people can truly have an encounter with Jesus and not want change. Truly have an encounter and not walk away from the encounter wanting change, wanting to do better, wanting their life to be turned around. All it takes is one encounter to change the trajectory of your life. All it takes is one encounter to take you to that next level. All it takes is one encounter to change your situation. And all it took was one encounter. Saul had one encounter with Jesus, changed his life, in spite of his ugly past. And here's the thing, I said Saul had an ugly past. And here's the thing, when you have an ugly past and God still uses you, it leaves a lot of people confused. Because we judge off stories. Like, God, you know who they are. You know what they've been through, and people are confused, like, why them? Why that person? Why that person? All that stuff that person did, why? I'm pretty sure, like, the Bible says when God had a talk with Ananias, Ananias was even like, Saul, you know he don't like us. You know he's trying to persecute us. You know he threatens us. He persecutes and threatens believers, and you chose Saul? Have we been like that before? We seen like, God, you chose them? You chose them. You know what they used to do, and you chose them, because it's like sometimes we don't celebrate deliverance. When people can be truly converted, truly delivered, truly changed because their past was so ugly, it's like, oh, that's a huge stain. And yes, they past got a stain, but we also stained by the blood of Christ. That's that change, and people will judge you based on your past. And Ananias was confused, but I like how God told Ananias, he said, look, Saul, this man is my chosen vessel to proclaim my name. Oh, doesn't it feel good to know that you can be jacked up like Saul and still be chosen? Oh, you can be jacked up and chosen. You can be messed up and chosen. It's people judging you because you messed up, but you like, God still chose me. God still chose me. You can be confused and chosen, because it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. And yes, you had an ugly start, but it's about how you finish. Everybody in here got some type of past. Everybody in here grew up in got different backgrounds, different cultures, different neighborhoods they grew up in that impacted how you start. But it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. Because to be honest, if God cared about your past so much that he didn't want to use you, look at Rahab, the prostitute. Look at her occupation. Look at how she started. And she finished in the book of Hebrews, that's what's known as the Hall of Fame of Faith. Jacked up and still used by God. She was used by God. She the one who helped Joshua and his men coming to Jericho. If it wasn't for her, it wouldn't be no story of the walls falling down. God used her. God used the prostitute. God used Rahab, and God was like, God will look at your past and still choose you. That should make us feel good. That should make us feel good, knowing that his love for us will look at our past, look at our story and be like, this is who I need. This is who I need. This is who I choose to be my vessel. This is who I'm going to choose to strengthen my earthly king. This is who I'm going to choose to win souls. This is who I'm going to choose. I know y'all looking at their past, but look, I can still use them. Because your story is bait. I'm learning that God will use whomever he chooses to make sure his job gets done. Whether you like them or not, he's going to use them. Whether you like their past or not, like their story or not, he's going to use. Then a lot of us, we try to tell God who he going to use. We try to tell God, I want you to pick this person. Because this person fits, in my head, the right person. This person fits it's like you built this person in your head and like, okay, God, this is who I want you to use. And God said, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do what I want to do because I'm God. And we had this, what we had earlier this year, we had that sermon series about like stewardship. God is the owner. We are the simple stewards. We're supposed to manage what he's given us. And God makes all the decisions. He's going to bring people in your life and take people out your life as he sees fits. As he sees fit. And let me tell you, trying to do God's job just causes frustration. Because you're going to try to use people that God's like, that's not for you. That's not the person I need you in your life. That's not the person that's going to be you. But you frustrated because it's not working. And God said it's not working because it wasn't my pick. We trying to pick people and tell God, you need to approve this pick. And say, no, I'm not going. You need to approve my pick. And we don't approve the pick because it's not what we like. You picky about food. All the parents, when you be like, no, you're going to eat what's on the table. I don't want this, but this is what you're going to eat. You better like it. You better enjoy it. And some of us like, God, I don't like this person you pick. You better like it. You better enjoy it because this is my pick. God is going to use whomever he's going to use, whether you agree with their story or not. And that's why we need to embrace our story. And a lot of times we don't embrace our story because we're not comfortable ourselves with our own story. And we try to hide our own story from God. God knows your story. You can't hide it from God. You remember when with Jesus and at the well with the Samaritan woman? He read her. He knew all her story, knew all her business. Go tell your husband, I don't have, yeah, you're right, you don't have no husband. You had 5 husbands, and the man you with ain't your husband either. And she's like, ooh, let me go tell some people about a man that know all my business. Let me go tell her. And look, she left her water jug because she was like, he just read me. And let me go tell her. And she told, and everybody started like, they started coming to Jesus. Because she took it upon herself to tell. In spite of her story, God used her to go proclaim his name. You can't hide it. And in this text, in the gospel according to Mark, we see a man being commissioned by Jesus to go back home and tell his story. Tell his story. Someone say, tell your story. Embrace your story. Embrace your story. Embrace it. Embrace it. Notice that this man, Jesus didn't tell him to go get training to go tell your story. He didn't say go get ordained. He didn't say go get certified. He said go tell your story, because your story is the best. Your story is going to be the best sermon you ever preach. People think you have to be in this position to preach. No, your life preaches all by itself. It's your life. It's your story. And as much as he wanted to go, he begged to go with Jesus. And Jesus was like, no, I need you to stay here. Go back home and tell your story, because this text takes place in Gentile territory. And Gentile territory, these are people that don't know the true God and are viewed as enemy of the Jews. So Jesus came here and landed in Gentile territory to plant the gospel among the Gentiles. And he used a demon-possessed man to do it. A demon-possessed man. That's a story. And Jesus used him to proclaim his name. And I believe if I was able to sit down and have an interview with this demon-possessed man, I'm sure he would definitely tell me his story and tell everyone in his room his story and say, Pastor Nick, I remember for a long time I was demon-possessed. The Gospel according to Luke said for a long time. You ever been in a season of suffering so long, it's been a long time, you just lost count? It's like, look, I don't know how long I've been. It's been a long time. It's been a long time. I've been in a season a long time, been in a storm a long time. He was demon-possessed for a long time. And I wore no clothes, Pastor Nick. I was in demon possession for a long time. I didn't have no clothes. All my business was showing. It was an embarrassing moment. I was living life like a wild animal. The Bible said, the text says, if you read a few verses before our text today, the whole chapter 5 starts, I was living like a wild animal. I was living life like a wild animal. I was naked. I was in a rage, and I couldn't live around people because I couldn't control myself. I couldn't live around people, so I was an outcast to society. I was living life in the tombs. Don't that sound like a story? Living life in the tombs. And then one day when I was in the tombs, I looked up and I saw a boat coming. And I said, Self said, I said, that looked like Jesus. That looked like Jesus coming down on the boat. And let me tell you something, Pastor Nick. Before Jesus was able to get off the boat, I was right there ready to meet him. The text said, immediately I met him. See, it means shows how desperate you are. Or how desperate are you wanting to get out your situation? How desperate are you wanting to get out this season of life you're in? You have to have some type of desperation. Like Jesus didn't go to him, he came to Jesus. The Bible said immediately I went up to him. I didn't let Jesus stretch. I didn't let him take. Y'all know how you are after a long road trip. You just get out, want to stretch your legs a little bit and relax. No, I didn't let Jesus get none of that because I was ready. Like, look, I need this encounter. I need this encounter because Jesus, I'm sure Jesus like, oh, already? Good, I just got off the boat. I just got off the boat already, this man, but if he was bet him, that means he was waiting. He was just waiting. Like one of my favorite memes, that Spike Lee meme when he like this. He was just wait. He naked and waiting. Just sitting here. The text says he was naked. He was naked. He said he wore no clothes. That's what he said. If you, in the gospel according to Luke, he said it. He said this man was naked. This man was naked. He naked and waiting, and he see Jesus coming. He immediately, when Jesus got off, he met Jesus. And Jesus just got off the boat after a long boat ride. The other side of the Sea of Galilee, he's coming. He just got done teaching. He's on his way traveling. I'm pretty sure Jesus didn't get a lot of good rest because during that time, that's when a storm came, and then all the disciples were flipping out. And Jesus just trying to get some rest at the bottom of the boat on a cushion. And then they waking him up like, Lord, do you care if we die? And Jesus got up and he calmed the raging sea. And here's the thing, he's calm. Before we get into this text, he just calmed a raging sea. And now he's about to calm a raging man. We serve a God that's in a calming business. A God that will calm your rage. A God that will calm it. When life is raging, he will calm it. When your marriage is raging, he will calm it. When your emotions are raging, he will calm it. He's in the calming business. And the way he calms us is with his presence. See, it's some people that in your, like when you're a kid and your life is going hard, and then your mama step in a room, it provides a little peace. When your daddy step in the room, it provides a little peace. But when Jesus steps in a situation, it provides a little peace. I feel good about myself when Jesus steps in. He calms our situations with his presence, with his peace, and with his word. When life is raging, he will calm it. The peace of God surpasses all understanding and brings calmness into raging situations. The sea was raging and this man was raging. He couldn't control himself. The text says they put shackles on him, he'll break them. That's the life he was living. That's why you got to get from around here. We can't even tame you. It's just got your story. You got too much going on, fam. Just need to go ahead and live amongst the dead folk. And he got off the boat, when Jesus got off the boat, he met him, and Jesus is about to calm a raging man. He's met by a man in rage. This man went to Jesus, and that's the biggest piece we need to see. Jesus didn't get off the boat and say, where this man at? Jesus got off the boat, and the man is already there, like, I've been waiting on you. I saw you coming, and I was like, I'm about to get this right here. I'm not about to miss this opportunity. And one encounter changed his life. He came to Jesus vulnerable. Like when I think of somebody being naked, that's vulnerable, that's exposed. And we have to be willing to come to Jesus naked, not physically, but metaphorically. We should come to Jesus vulnerable. We should trust Jesus exposed. We should be able to trust Jesus in our true self, our true emotions. Like a lot of us, that's one thing about David. David had true emotions. He felt how God is a big boy. He can handle your true emotions. He can handle your true self. You upset, you upset. You angry. Because we're human. We're human. Life is going to hit you with so many different punches and haymakers. You're going to get upset from time to time with God. Because you like, God, if you love me so much, how did you let this happen to me? And you frustrated a little bit. We all been frustrated before, have we? We all been some type of frustrated with God, but God can handle that. We coming to God exposed, vulnerable, our true selves. And when Jesus met this man, he immediately went to work, casting out the impure spirit. Long story short, when Jesus went to cast out the spirits, we're going to fast forward, but pretty much when Jesus asked the demon name, he said legion. Because it was so many. This man was possessed by so many demons. And here's the thing, that wasn't the demon's name, but he's trying to intimidate Jesus on how many there are. And one thing about Jesus cannot be easily intimidated. And that's why we should embrace our story, because Jesus is not intimidated by our story. Other people might be intimidated by your story, but not Jesus. Your parents might be intimidated by your story, but not Jesus. It tried to intimidate Jesus, and Jesus cannot be easily intimidated. The size of your story, the size of your problem cannot turn God off. A lot of times we think a problem is too big for God, and we try to handle problems ourselves. Have we all tried to handle a problem ourselves? We like God, we may think it's too little for God, like God, I can do this myself. And then it's frustration. We frustrated. Or we think it's too big, like God, look, I don't need you to worry about this, I got it. And then we frustrated. When nothing is too big, nothing is too small for God to fix. God cannot be intimidated by your story. He can handle your problem no matter what size your problem is. Cast out, cast out, cast out. And one thing I love about this text as well, the demons asked Jesus for permission. They asked Jesus for permission to go, because Jesus cast them out into the pigs. But they asked for permission. That goes to show you, anytime you got to ask somebody for permission, it really shows who's in charge. So the enemy cannot do what he does without permission. Look at Job. Satan needed permission to impact Job. He needed permission to go mess up Job's life. He needed permission. So that should provide us comfort and peace knowing that God allowed this. And if he allowed this, that means he's going to handle it. If he allowed this, that means he's going to see us through this. They asked Jesus for permission. Permission. Jesus, it really shows who's in charge. It shows the power of the God we serve. And we should just thank God for his power. Thank God for his power. Thank you for being the great God that you are. Thank you for being the powerful God that you are. Because the enemy needs permission to even get to me. That really shows who's in charge. And after Jesus cast out the demons, the people that saw it went to go tell others. A lot of people wasn't happy about it. Because like I said, this is Gentile territory. And pigs was like the money, the market. So he just impacted their business. He's an impact because the demons cast into the pigs went and drowned. And so now people say a lot of people won't be happy off your healing. Instead of praising God for healing the demon-possessed man, they looking at the wrong thing. They upset, looking at the wrong thing instead of praising God for the deliverance, praising God for unchaining someone that was chained up, loosing someone that was loosed up, that was tethered to something. Breaking chains, instead of breaking chains, you looking at the wrong thing. Look at that. And we think about the story with Nehemiah, when God put on Nehemiah's heart to go build a wall. People didn't want him to go build that wall. People didn't want Nehemiah to go rebuild those walls, because some people wanted those walls to stay broken because they benefit from brokenness. And some people in your life like you better broken. Some people in your life like you better possessed by something, like you in need, like you enraged, because it validates them. Some people need you to be in that position you in, because that means you're going to need them. And the second they feel like God will bless you in a way where you don't need them anymore, they start hating. And you trying to figure out, like, when they start hating on me, oh, that's when I stopped doing this. That's when I stopped being bound by this. That's when God released me from this. Because some people benefit from your brokenness. Some people, they had no problem of the man's living in the tombs all demon possessed, but they had a problem when Jesus cast the demons out into the pigs and drowned the pigs. They had a problem with that. They had a problem with seeing this man, and the text says when they came to Jesus, they saw a man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. They saw the man sitting there, dressed in his right mind, and they were afraid. And they were afraid. They had no problem with him keeping his naked self in the tombs. They had a problem when he was all dressed up and clothed in his right mind. Because some people want you to not have your right mind because they want to keep Because when you're not in your right mind, you're vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, they can take advantage of you and use you how they want to use you. But the second Jesus get a hold of you and then free you from that, and you in your right mind, now you're able to look and say, this situation is not benefiting me. I need to shake. And people don't want you shaking out their life. When it's some people you need to just walk away from, some opportunities you need to leave from, some people you just need to say deuces to, I'm gone. This is not benefiting me anymore. Yeah, it worked when I was in bondage, but now I'm free, I'm gone. And that's what Jesus would do. They said they saw him sitting at Jesus' feet. Jesus has the power to reverse your situation. This man went from naked to being clothed. He went from being in a rage to sitting at Jesus' feet. He been possessed in his mind to clothed in his right mind. You see how Jesus just flipped everything around. He flipped it. He did a whole one. God had the power to 180 your situation. I say he in a common business, he in a 180 business. He will turn that thing around for your glory, turn things around for his glory. Jesus turned the situation around for his glory. Remember, this is Gentile territory, so now this man has a powerful testimony. Now this man has a story. And everybody saw he was demon possessed. And now look at him, chilling, feeling good. And then he felt so good that he begged Jesus to follow him. See, it's when you really get in the encounter of God, you just want a little bit of more. You want a little bit of more. Like it's hard. That's why it's hard for me, to be honest, to walk away from God. As much as life gets thrown my way and you know, all these different emotions going through, and times when God allows things to happen to me that I necessarily didn't like, but I just know what he's capable of. I just know what type of business he in. And I just say, God, I just want a little bit more. A little more. That's all. Just sprinkle a little more, and I just want more. And I'm going to keep falling. And he wanted more. And he said, I want to, hey, you getting on the boat, don't leave me. I want to come back with. But it's funny how Jesus went to this Gentile territory on purpose. The fact that he got off the boat, healed this man, now he about to get on the boat and leave, that means he had an agenda. Because we serve a strategic God. God has a rhythm. God has an agenda. God has a strategy. And a lot of times his strategy doesn't make sense. And in his strategy, he's going to use people with some ugly past. He's going to use people that's jacked up. See, in our strategy, we don't want to use that. We want to use perfect people. Even though we're not perfect, we want them to be perfect. And Jesus reversed the trajectory of this brother's story. This man was demon possessed, and he was set free from the unclean spirits. And now he has a powerful testimony indicating and showing the grace, mercy, and power and authority of Jesus. A man Satan tried to destroy was now pushing back the kingdom of darkness with a powerful testimony. Satan tried to destroy this man. Now Jesus is using the same man that Satan tried to destroy to proclaim his name in this territory, in this region. This man was set so free, he wanted more of Jesus. He wanted more of Jesus. And then as I close, I just want to say, embrace your story. Embrace your story. And verse 20 said, the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him. And here's the part. Everyone was amazed by what he said, at what he told them. It's hard to not be amazed by Jesus. It's hard to not be amazed when God does something great in somebody else's life. That's why we shouldn't be hating on people's testimony. We shouldn't be hating on the blessing. We shouldn't be hating what Jesus is doing in somebody else's life. We should be, wow, amazed by it. And say, look at God. Look at what God is, because he's doing it for them. That means he can do it for me. We should be amazed about it. Now, to be honest, our concern should come when we stop being amazed by what he's done. That means we got comfortable. That means we got too familiar with Jesus. That's why I always say he didn't have to do what he did, but he did it anyway because it shows that he didn't have to do this. So don't get too comfortable. Don't get too familiar, because being too familiar will prevent some things happening to you. Remember when Jesus, and early in Jesus' ministry, the Bible said when Jesus went back home, the people were so familiar with him, he couldn't perform many miracles. He couldn't really do what he wanted to do because people were just too familiar with his past, too familiar with who he once was. And they stopped being amazed. And let's be amazed by what God is doing in his earthly kingdom. When you hear somebody else's story, be excited about it. Be on fire about it. Be like, look at God. Look at God. Be amazed. And the text says they were amazed by what he told them. Jesus wanted him to embrace his story and tell his story, to proclaim and win souls in that area. See, 2 chapters later, Jesus went into that region again, and it says many people came to him for healing. It was the fruit of the changed life of this former demon-possessed man. And so Jesus didn't just help one man. He helped an entire region. It's bigger than you. Your story is bigger than you. Jesus will use you to help many others. Jesus will heal you to help many others. Your story is planting a seed. It's bait when you're going fishing, and it's also planting seeds in other people's lives. Here's the thing, you can't force people to accept Jesus or not. You can't. But let's not underestimate the value of planting seeds. You can't force somebody to accept it or not, but still plant a seed. Plant a seed. My mom used to tell me all the time when she used to, raising 2 boys only 14 months apart, and she tried to tell us about manly stuff. And we were like, we don't want to hear this coming from you, Mama. And she went, I'm just planting seeds. So you can't say you didn't know. And you can try not to listen all you want, but in your head, like, my mama told me. My mama said this was going to happen. As much as I didn't want to. So people could pretend they're not listening, but they hear you. They hear something. And you don't know when. So you plant that seed and let that water happen, and it will grow. But yeah, it will cultivate, it will grow. But let's not underestimate the value of planting seeds. Embrace your story so you can plant seeds out here and let God do the growing. Let God do the water, and trust that God is going to do what he says he's going to do. Trust that God is going to, and just pray that person has an encounter with Jesus. Because one encounter can change someone's life. Amen? Amen. That's all I have for today. Embrace your story. Embrace it.